It's low light. We're going to do this in the low lighting. So in the last video, I was talking about primary selves, and I specifically gave the example of the people pleaser. And I was talking about how those primary selves are going to run the show until there is an aware ego process online that can start to take care of what is vulnerably, what's vulnerable, what's motivating that primary self to work so hard, to polarize your system so intensely. And then you have to build a great deal of self-trust with that primary self that you are in fact able to take care of what is vulnerable underneath that successfully, and that you're allies and not against that primary self. Though there is a renegotiation, because if you're becoming the the conductor, the maestro of your internal orchestra, there is a shift in the internal power dynamics that have to take place, which, by the way, changes the external power dynamics that you have with other people. But so, okay, last time we were talking about primary selves and the pleaser. Okay, today I want to talk briefly about disowned selves, or what internal family systems calls exiles. And just like how I was saying, the primary self is what allowed us to socially survive, right? So that's what gets pushed up to the front. This is like the coping strategy that we have to deal with a specific type of vulnerability. So with the pleaser, the vulnerability that it's covering is what? Fear of attack, fear of rejection. It's some type of a boundary violation. So people who are pleasers have the feeling that people are not safe, right? That's why they have to use this coping strategy, this internal shifting and really manipulation of other people in order to be safe, because they're constantly in a hypervigilant state trying to chameleon themselves and do whatever this other person needs or wants to the absence of, or to the suppression of the exile. So first, what's vulnerable about the pleaser is, I'm terrified that if I don't do this, I'm either going to be hurt, like someone's going to hurt me, or they're going to leave me, which is also a form of pain. Incoming and outgoing boundary violations, okay? I like this example, right? Because it keeps everything flowing. So on the other side, we have a part that is really connected to the needs, right? So this pleaser is very focused on the relationship with other people. This other part that's been disowned is, well, what about me? What about what I need? What about my thoughts? What about what I want? What about how I feel? That's what's been stuffed away. And obviously to varying degrees, depending on the environment that the person grew up in and depending on how they coped with that. But here's what's vulnerable about this part. So the disowned selves, they are like a beach ball that you try to push under the water, but they will continue to pop up in different ways, in rebellious ways sometimes. They can hold a lot of anger. They can hold a lot of grief and sadness because they have been so rejected from the rest of the system. And so they might be hated, and they're so mad they're fighting, right, to try to get out. So what's vulnerable about the exile, let's say in this case, of the part that says, well, what about my needs, is two things. One, grieving the loss of everything that didn't get to happen because the pleaser was there taking over, the life, the full expression that didn't get to happen. That's one thing that's vulnerable. And the other thing that's vulnerable is, if the person does not own that part, they will never get to have that. They will forever feel trapped and isolated and alone, because they will never be able to go into the depths of that intimacy with another person in a way that's actually fully connected to the truth of who they are. That's a prison and a form of isolation of hell all its own. And so both of these parts are actually living in an isolated hell. And we have to be able to see the hell that the parts of us are living in order to unburden them. And that there's something vulnerable about both, and there's something valuable about both. And here's the thing. So there's a couple things I want to break down. One is, when there is a feeling of I want to cut off from, or you hear teachings that say, kill that part of you. First of all, it doesn't die, okay? If anything, it's transformed and exalted into its highest form. But whenever you hear that, kill, I want to cut off from that part of me. I just want it to die. I want to kill it. That's a part. Because the aware ego is heart-centered, present, curious, does not have an agenda, sees the value in each and every one of these parts, and is able to have that perspective. But parts are very one-dimensional. They have tunnel vision. And so they see that other part as a detriment to what it is that they're prioritizing above that other thing, right? So it's differences in priorities. One's prioritizing you, the other's prioritizing your relationship to other people. And you absolutely need both. So when you feel that, we go, okay, that's interesting. Let's tune in. Now, let's just take this example. The pleaser, it's a little obvious in that situation, right? It's definitely been pushing against the authentic self because that's dangerous. The needs, right? The like, what if I just say what I really feel in this moment? You're gonna fuck up this whole relationship that I have, walked on eggshells to preserve. So it's very clear how that one is like, we're better off without you, right? My priority lies in safety with relationship, whether that's, intimate or otherwise. And on the other side, it's easy to see how when the personal authentic truth has been suppressed for so long, right? It's pissed. It would understandably want to kill the people pleaser because it might believe that in doing that, it could have a chance at a life, actually. So it's really our job to mediate that war from a heart-centered, loving place of understanding what's actually going on within us. And we're not going to get anywhere by turning against primary selves or allowing primary selves to actually suppress other aspects of us and just have control, right? It's really our job to be that conductor of that internal orchestra. So the last thing I want to end on here is we are in the transformational plane. This is all contrast, baby. This is all duality. And that's what it's going to be for the rest of the time that we're here, to a degree, is we're sifting through pairs of opposites. And we're continuing to refine our ability to balance those harmonics and to find an equilibrium that is dynamic, not static, between any and all opposites that we feel arising within ourselves in any given moment. And it's a truly magical opportunity that we have to be able to practice this level of alchemy. And I'll leave you with this. I was almost like, do I want to include this? Yes, I do. Because I want to be able to keep, some of this stuff for the deeper masterclass and container that I'm building in. Obviously, a 10-minute, 7-minute video is not going to be able to encapsulate all of that, but two ways, and there's so many. I'm going to go into this in a much greater depth in the class and in the longer format that I'm bringing people through with the modules. But there's 2 ways to tell if you're tapping into a disowned self. And first is judgment or dislike of a quality in another person. And to the opposite, when we idolize or really just admire a quality in someone, like we want to get closer to that thing, that also tells us that there's something about that we're trying to externally, through the relationship externally, we're actually trying to integrate that thing. The sooner that we realize that, the easier that it is to actually work with that polarity. So, have a wonderful day, you guys. Be well.